Chapter 12. The eagle and the boy flew right up through upland without stopping until they came to Alvacarlby, where the eagle came down on a stone in the middle of the river, just below a rushing waterfall, the white wall of foam from the waterfall above them, and the river racing all round them. "I'll tell you now why I want to take you back to the wild geese," said Gorgo. Then he told Nils about the big eagle eyrie up on the cliff edge high above a hidden valley. Far down below gleamed the small lake, and on its tussocky shore the wild geese were nesting and hatching their young among dwarf birches and osiers. The eagles never took more geese than they needed, so the geese continued to breed in the valley, for they also benefited from one lot of robbers keeping others away. But then one evening, the leader goose noticed that the parent eagles did not return to the eyrie, and in the stillness of the morning, they heard pitiful cries coming from above. The leader goose flew up high to be able to look down into the eyrie, and there among the whitening bones, blood-stained feathers, and hare's feet, lay a semi-naked eaglet, screaming. "Was that you and a caw?" said the boy. "Yes, it was. I don't remember myself, but a caw has often told me about it. Let me go on now." The eaglet was a proper rascal. "Go and get me some food at once," he screamed. "It's shameful of Mother to let me starve. What are you sitting there staring at? Are you deaf? I need food." The wild goose presumed the parent birds had been shot, and if she let the eaglet starve, the geese would be left in peace. But it wasn't in her nature to refuse help to a deserted creature, so she flew away and was soon back with a char she had just caught, which is a fish. Instead of thanking her, the eaglet struck fiercely out at her. "Do you think I can eat that stuff? I want grouse or lemming, and don't you forget it." A caw stretched out her neck and nipped him in the skin of the back of his head. "You'll just have to put up with what I bring," she said. "Your mother and father have gone, but if you wish to starve to death while waiting up here for grouse and lemmings, then that's all right by me." Then she flew away, and when she came back, the fish had slipped down the eaglet's empty stomach. It was hard work finding food for this greedy youngster, who soon came to regard a caw as his real mother. A week or two later, a caw saw it was molting time, when she wouldn't be able to fly. "I can't fly up with any more food now," she said. "You'll have to pluck up courage and throw yourself down into the valley, where I can feed you as before." Without a second's hesitation, the eaglet hurled straight out into the air. He tumbled about for a while, but soon got his wings working and came down unhurt. All that summer, he lived with the wild geese and made friends with the goslings. He wanted to live like them, and when they swam out on the lake, he went after them and nearly drowned. But one day he realized he was an eagle after all, and so had to live like an eagle. A caw was proud of having brought him up to be gentle and harmless, and was not going to tolerate his desire to live in his own way. "Do you think I want to be friends with a bird-eater?" she hissed. "You live in the way I have taught you, then you can come home with us as before." But they were both equally proud, and neither would give way. "So a caw told me never to show myself in her presence again," said Gorgo finally, "and no one may talk to her about me." Then he added, "But I've never attacked a wild goose." The eagle and the boy flew on over Gastric Land. A plain almost completely covered with spruce forest lay below to the south, and after that came a beautiful area of wooded hills, rushing streams, and gleaming lakes. There were thickly populated parishes and roads and railways crossing each other, and one ironworks after another along the watercourses, just like the ones the boy had seen in Bergslargana. Further north were again dark forests, but now the land ran in mountains and valleys like a rough sea. "This landscape wears spruce skirts and gray stone jerseys," thought the boy. "And round its waist is a belt embroidered with blue lakes and flowering pastures, the ironworks decorating it like a row of jewels. And as a buckle, it has a whole town with castle and churches and clusters of houses." Gorgo eventually came down on a bare mountain slope. "There's game here in the forest, and I must go hunting," he said. "You won't be frightened, will you, if I leave for a while?" "Oh, no, I don't suppose so," said Nils, though he did feel somewhat deserted as he sat down on a stone and looked around. There had obviously been a forest fire there, for all the trees and plants on the ground had gone, leaving nothing but black stumps between the smooth stones. And after the fire, the wind had swirled away a lot of the good topsoil, leaving the ground dry and loose like ash. The boy thought it all looked dreadful, and he couldn't find even a whortleberry to eat. Then he heard singing down in the forest and saw a procession of people on their way up the ridge, a whole crowd of children with pickaxes, spades, and packs of food. All the children in the parish had come to plant trees, their teacher with them, followed by the foresters with a load of pine saplings and spruce seeds. There was life and movement everywhere. The children started hacking and digging, then planting seedling after seedling on every bare patch of earth they could find. The seedlings were to bind together the remaining soil, and then new soil would form between the trees, and the seeds would fall into that. So in a few years' time, the children would be able to pick raspberries and bilberries, and the seedlings would eventually become great trees. A lot of people came up the hill to watch, but then they also joined in, so it was even more fun. "When our children and grandchildren see this forest," they said to each other, "they'll think how wise were the people who left them this fine heritage." Gorgo came back satisfied and full of food, so next day the journey north continued. Hälsingland spread out below, the first leaves out in the pasture lands, the fields green with new grass and young spring corn. It was high, mountainous country, but a wide valley ran right through it, and everywhere he saw people and cattle leaving the farms and heading for the desolate forest, filling it with life. It seemed to be the custom for farmers to send their cattle to the outfield pastures all on the same day, or perhaps that is what it seemed like this year. All day they could hear the farm girls singing, cattle bellowing, and bells jangling as they laboriously made their way along winding paths and across wet mosses deep into the forest. There the land had been cleared for the outfield buildings and small gray cottages, and rich, lush grass grew all round them. When the cattle got there, they bellowed cheerfully and at once started grazing. The men chopped wood and fetched water. So soon smoke was curling out of chimneys on all the hills round about, while the farm girls set about the first milking. But when Gorgo was above Metalpad, they could see nothing but dark forests, and the boys sighed, "No people could possibly live here." "They have the forest as their fields," said the eagle. "Anyone trying to make a living out of fields like that would need a lot of patience," said Nils. "The rye fields at home grow during one summer, but the forest needed years to ripen into a harvest." Next, Gorgo wanted to show him how farming the forest was done, so he took the route over an area of bare stumps and cleared undergrowth. "That's a field that was mown last winter," he said. "In Skane," said Nils, "we gather the harvest in a few days, but this must take several weeks. They must be clever people to be able to mow a field like that." A little further on, they saw a wretched road that was narrow and crooked, stony and uneven. "The crop is hauled down that road to the stack," said the eagle. Then they came to a riverbank covered with sawdust and bark. "That's where the crop has been stacked," said Gorgo. Further on, they saw the great river Laguna flowing through a wide valley, the slopes clad in birches and aspen trees, a rich area with magnificent, well-built farms. "This is where the harvesters who mow the forest fields live," cried the eagle. "It looks as if it pays to work in the forest," said Nils. "They're proper manor houses down there." Gorgo swung east along the stately river. "That's the river which takes care of the crop and drives it to the mill." Great masses of logs were floating down the river, but the boy could see no one taking care of it. Scarcely more than half of the logs seemed to get where they were supposed to go. Perhaps the logs sailing along in the middle of the water did, but what happened to all the others that got caught up on the banks and were floating in the still waters of bays? or the ones that got broken in the waterfalls, or jammed against rocks and became great unsteady heaps. I wonder how long it takes for this crop to get to the mill, he said. Then he saw the loggers working with their boat hooks, bold, resolute men leaping from stone to stone in the rapids and running along the swaying heaps of logs as if walking on smooth ground. It was so exciting. Nils turned round backwards and watched them for a long time. Gradually they came to the mouth of the river, where they saw a sawmill as large as a small town. "That's the big timber mill called Svartik," cried the eagle, "and over there is Sundsville, the center of the logging area." They were very different from the towns in Skane, which looked so gray and old and serious. Sundsvall was new and bright and radiant in a beautiful bay, a cluster of high stone buildings in the middle, and in a curve round them wooden houses with little gardens. "It's wonderful that it can look like this so far north," said the boy. "What an amazing country we have. Wherever I go, there's always something for people to live off." The next day they crossed the border into Ångermanland, and the boy could then see a river that surpassed every other one he had previously seen. It looked like 3 different worlds, Nils thought. Furthest down in the valley, timber floating and salmon fishing, boats sailing and the sawmill clattering. Then 1 story higher up, the valley farms and villages, the farmers sowing their patches, cattle grazing, and the women weeding their kitchen gardens. And then highest up on the forested ridge, he saw the 3rd world, where the capercaillie hen laid her eggs, the elk stood in the thick undergrowth, the lynx prowled round, and the squirrels raced about in the flowering bilberry scrub. Suddenly the boy realized how hungry he was. "I've had nothing to eat for 2 whole days, he complained. Gorgo had no wish for it to be said that things were worse for the boy with him than with the wild geese. "You will have as much food as you want. You don't have to starve with an eagle as your traveling companion." He spotted a farmer sowing his field, the seed sack on the edge of the field, so he headed for that. But before he reached the ground, a tremendous uproar arose all round them. Crows and sparrows and swallows came in great numbers, screaming angrily at him, because they thought the eagle was going to take a bird. Then, when the farmer also came hurrying up, the eagle was forced to flee. The little birds mobbed him wherever he went, and their cries made people come running out and chase him off. Nils felt quite sorry for Gorgo. Then they came to a large farm where the mistress of the house had put a tray of freshly baked cinnamon buns out to cool. The eagle flew down but didn't dare go right up to it. The farmer's wife saw him and laughed loudly. "If you want a bun, come and take it," she called, holding up a bun. Nils sat in a pine top munching the delicious bun. "If I become human again," he thought, "I'll look up at that nice woman by this great river and thank her properly."